Good morning. It is Thursday, May the 20th, and this is The Drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. I'm going to read from the Daily Declarations for Spiritual Warfare, then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance and the Star-Spangled-Banner. All that when I come back. Thank you. May the 20th, I will bless all of your valley places. My child, when you go through the valley of fear and trouble, lift up your eyes to me, for I will bless all your valley places. I will meet you in the valley, and I will speak tenderly to you. I will give you back your vineyards and will make your valley experience a door of hope. A fountain of living water will flow from my throne and will water your valley and will bring forth new life. The desert will rejoice and blossom as the rose. I will strengthen your weak hands and make firm your feeble knees. I will restore your strength and will come and save you. Water shall burst forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The parched ground will become a pool, and the thirsty land will become springs of living water. Daily Declaration. Let all my valley places be blessed in the name of Jesus. Open a door of hope in all my valley places. Let water flow into every valley place in my life, because my God has rescued me, restored my hope, and caused new life to spring forth out of the death of my valley. I will rejoice and will place my feet on his highway of holiness. I will come before him with singing and everlasting joy. Sorrow and sighing will flee away, for my Lord has filled me with joy and gladness. Amen. And I read, again, the Daily Declarations for Spiritual Warfare because they are also indicate that you can have a personal relationship with God. God has free will. We have free will. We can choose to associate ourselves with God, to try to move closer to God, or we can choose to move farther away. It also, because it emphasizes that God, to put it in street terms, God kicks ass. The left wants you to believe that it's all about peace, that Jesus and God are never righteous, that they're never angry, that they don't seek retribution, they don't seek justice, and that's just not true. It is absolutely untrue. You do what God wants you to do, and the message in the Bible is that God will bless you and will smite your enemies. And again, I want to remind everybody who the enemies are in this country, and that is all the people that are trying to subvert the Constitution of the United States of America. The people that think that they're going to create revolutions by hook or by crook are our enemies. We know that because of the oath of office that everyone takes, in which they swear to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same, etc., etc. So, they go against the Constitution. They are the enemy, period, not just a political opponent. And so we are righteous, those of us that follow the law, that follow the Constitution, but especially that follow God. God will protect us, and God will smite our enemies. So, now we are going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. Very beautiful, 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 beautiful. Back in a minute. Thank you. So commissions. There's it passed the House yesterday that 35 apparently Republicans broke ranks and voted for this commission. The thing that you need to keep in mind, I need to keep in mind, all true conservatives need to keep in mind is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The Democrats are going down a very dangerous path where we are going to be operating something like what we used to call a banana republic. And in banana republics, when one set of people take power, they immediately set about putting the former administration in jail. They have commissions, they have trials, usually show trials, so they can put all their political enemies behind bars. And that's what the Democrats are doing now. As a matter of fact, the Democrats in the state of California have announced that they're going to make the civil investigation of Donald Trump, they're going to turn it into a criminal investigation. And what should be said on the floor of the House by Republicans, they won't say this, and I'll explain why. But what they should be saying is that's fine. It's fine. You want to have your commissions. You're in charge. You're in power. You can have all the commissions you want. But you remember that very shortly we're going to have another election and we will be in charge. We will be deciding and we will have our commissions as well. You've opened a Pandora's box and you're going to let loose hell. You sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. Because when we come into power, we are going to have our commissions. We are going to start with the 2020 election, and we're going to investigate that very thoroughly with an eye to prosecuting the leadership of the Democrat Party who was complicit in that. And that means Old Joe, we're going Harris, and Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, all of the leadership of the Democrat Party are going to be investigated, criminally investigated, and civilly, for why not? The other thing that they need to realize, you guys want to cheat, and you don't even want to bother to try to have an investigation to try to prove to the American people that this was a fair election, then we have no choice but to cheat as well. That becomes the standard now. So we will cheat in 2022, we will cheat in 2024, and we will do a better job of it than the Democrats will. The Democrats will never, ever be in the majority in this country ever again. We will make sure of it. And we will, like I say, conduct investigation after investigation after investigation, and we will hound the Democrats out of this country. Not just out of the House, not just out of the Senate, not just out of politics. They will have to flee the country. And that's what the Democrats have wrought. And remember, whatever it is the Democrats do, Republicans can do better. Now, why won't the Republicans say something like that? Simple, fundraising. Every time the GOP on Twitter puts out some statement, they're whining and complaining about something. Well, things were better 6 months ago. This happened and it's terrible and horrible and awful. The border is a crisis. And every time they do, I put in a retweet and I ask them, what are you doing about it other than fundraising? Because that's all they're doing. That's all they're good for. And that's why the Republicans won't come out and say the things that need to be said, which is, okay, you want to play games? We're going to play games. And like I said, and we are going to kick your ass. Because we're better at it than you are. So, they won't do it because they realize that everybody's money is green. Democrat money is green. Republican money is green. Libertarian money is green. So, if you go out and you say things that have a tendency to turn off Democrats, the kind of Democrats that might be inclined to donate money either to the RNC or donate money to Republican candidates, then of course that source of income is going to dry up. But there's a point in which you have to say, money be damned. principles matter. And that without principles, it doesn't matter how much money you raise, because at the end of the day, you're no different and no better than your enemies. I don't want to be part of a Republican Party that's like that. Okay, that's Lynn Cheney. Lynn Cheney's neutral. She's not a Republican. She's not a conservative. She's not a Democrat. She pretends to be neutral. All she's interested in doing is fundraising so that she can get in office, so that she can fundraise, so that she can get back in office, etc., etc. She's nothing. She's a zero. And it is long past time for us to chase the zeros out of office, to chase the zeros out of the GOP, and have the GOP be full of partisans, people that are partisan in favor of the GOP, in favor of the planks of the platform of the Republican Party, and partisan in favor of the United States of America. It was somebody, let's say Ted Cruz, that was making note about how 6 months ago things were much better in this country than they are now. Our border was under control. We had the least amount of illegal immigration in 45 years, that we were a world power with regards to oil, and that there was peace in the Middle East. And now all that is undone by Democrats. So, and that was back in the day when we had a partisan running the executive branch. Donald Trump, you say anything you want about Donald Trump, but don't dare call him neutral. There was nothing neutral about President Trump. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now I'm going to be reading from Chapter 6 of Live Not by Lies. And in these chapters, it's all about the solution. What do you do to slow or stop the encroachment of soft totalitarianism in this country? And Chapter 6 is entitled Cultivate Cultural Memory. And there's a quote here: "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." That's a party slogan from the novel 1984. Recently, a bright-eyed and cheerful 26-year-old California woman told me that she thinks of herself as a communist. Quote, "It's just so beautiful, this dream of everybody being equal," unquote, she said. When she asked me what I was working on, I told her about the struggles of a Christian dissident imprisoned and tortured by the Soviets, whom I had recently interviewed in Moscow. She fell silent. "Don't you know about the Gulag?" I asked naively. Of course she didn't. Nobody ever told her. We, her parents and grandparents, have failed her generation. And if she develops no curiosity about the past, she will fail herself. Here's an aside. Again, her parents failed her because they did what? They were not her parents. They didn't do parenting. They were busy being her friend. Why? Because they were brainwashed into doing that. They think that that's the trend, and people like to be trendy. They want to be with the in crowd, to quote a Ramsey Lewis tune. And so they don't parent their kids. They don't give them solid directions. The whole idea that brainwashing says, well, you got to let kids decide for themselves. No. Let kids decide for themselves. They're going to eat ice cream every meal. They're going to refuse to eat green vegetables, which is going to make them break out into rashes and things of that nature. They're going to end up hurting themselves because children think that if it feels good, it must be good. And if it feels bad, it must be bad. I don't like the way broccoli tastes, therefore I will not eat it. That kind of thinking. And that's not thinking at all. So the parents have to step in. They have to tell their kids. Now, when your kids become 18, if they decide that you're wrong and they want to go a different direction, well, you got to let them go. but provide them with the foundation. You have to provide them with that foundation. If there's nothing else that you do for the United States of America, you don't get involved with the military, USO, veterans organizations, whatever, at least raise your children and raise them right. Back to the book. She's not alone. Every year, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, a nonprofit educational and research organization established by the U.S. Congress, carries out a survey of Americans to determine their attitudes towards communism, socialism, and Marxism in general. In 2019, the survey found that a startling number of Americans of the post-Cold War generations have a favorable view of left-wing radicalism, and only 57% of millennials believe that the Declaration of Independence offers a better guarantee of freedom and equality than the Communist Manifesto. The political religion that murdered tens of millions, imprisoned and tortured countless more, and immersed the lives of half of humanity in its time, and the defeat of which required agonizing struggle by allies across borders, oceans, political parties, and generations. This hateful ideology is romanticized by ignorant young people. Now, I would say on this one that we don't have that much to worry about because most of the young people today are they're not down for the struggle. You know, if you go back to the quote from the girl where she says, "It's just so beautiful, this dream of everybody being equal." So this is not a statement from somebody that's down for the struggle. This is not a statement from somebody that is willing to go out and martyr themselves for the revolution. This is not the statement from somebody who is willing to martyr themselves for socialist paradise, who's willing to sacrifice their life, who's willing to sacrifice their lifestyle, much less their life. Okay? They've been brainwashed, just like everyone else has, just like people on the right, into believing that you can have your cake and eat it too. You can pretend to be a revolutionary while you live like the bourgeoisie. Okay? There's a book about this. It's called Bobos in Paradise. Bobo stands for Bohemian Bourgeoisie. And it's exactly about people on the left that are confused and actually they're just looking to get style points. And so they sort of vacillate between being a bohemian, somebody that's likes to talk about the revolution, goes to coffee shops. That's the typical bohemian is the coffee shop person, and the bourgeoisie, the person with, it used to be a station wagon, but now with an SUV and with a smartphone or two. Okay, so they kind of vacillate between the two. And this woman thinks again, isn't it romantic? But she's not going to put on a pair of gloves. She's not going to pick up a hammer to either take down the existing structures or to build anything. She just likes the dream. She loves to dream. So most of the kids today, the millennials, whatnot, they're no threat. They'll talk. They may talk a good game, but at the end of the day, they're not going to give up their smartphones for socialist paradise. Writing in the Harvard Crimson in 2017, undergraduate Laura Nicolai, whose parents endured the horrors of Romanian communism, spoke out against the falsification of history that her fellow Ivy Leaguers receive, both in class and in the trendy Marxism of intellectual student culture. Trendy being the operative word there. Depictions of communism on campus paint the ideology as revolutionary or idealistic, overlooking its authoritarian violence, she writes. Instead of deepening our understanding of the world, the college experience teaches us to reduce one of the most destructive ideologies in human history to a one-dimensional, sanitized narrative. And I think that can be summed up in one word, and that is partisan. Does that sound like an effort by the left on our college campuses to be neutral, to just give you the facts and let you decide? No. It's partisanship. And if we on the right decide that we're going to respond to partisanship with neutrality, with zeros, then we deserve all the misery that we're going to get. Forgetting the atrocities of communism is bad enough. What is even more dangerous is the habit of forgetting one's past. The Czech novelist Kundera dryly observes that nobody today will defend gulags, but the world remains full of suckers for the false utopian promises that bring gulags into existence. Not to know what happened before you were born is to remain a child forever, said Cicero. This explains Kundera is why communists place such an emphasis on conquering the minds and hearts of young people. In his novel, The Book of Laughter and Forgetting, Kundera recalls a speech that the Czech president Huzák gave to a group of young pioneers, urging them to keep pressing forward to the Marxist paradise of peace, justice, and equality. Quote, "Children never look back," unquote. And what he meant was that we must never allow the future to collapse under the burden of memory. A collective loss of historical memory, not just memory of communism, but memory of our shared cultural past within the West, is bound to have a devastating effect on our future. It's not that forgetting the evils of communism means that we're in danger of recreating precisely that form of totalitarianism. It's that the act of forgetting itself makes us vulnerable to the totalitarianism in general. Put another way, we not only have to remember totalitarianism to build a resistance to it, we have to remember how to remember, period. Why memory matters. Everything about modern society is designed to make memory, historical, social, and cultural, hard to cultivate. Christians must understand that not only to resist soft totalitarianism, but also to transmit the faith to the coming generations. In his 1989 book, How Societies Remember, the late British social anthropologist Paul Connerton explains that there are different kinds of memory. Historical memory is an objective recollection of past events. Social memory is what people choose to remember. That is deciding collectively which facts about past events it believes to be important. Cultural memory constitutes the stories, events, people, and other phenomena that a society chooses to remember as the building blocks of its collective identity. A nation's gods, its heroes, its villains, its landmarks, its art, its music, its holidays. All these things are part of its cultural memory. Connerton says that participants in any social order must presuppose a shared memory. Memory of the past conditions, how they experience the present. That is, how they grasp its meaning and how they are to understand it and what they are supposed to do in it. No culture and no person can remember everything. A culture's memory is the result of its collective sifting of facts to produce a story that society tells itself to remember who it is. Without collective memory, you have no culture, and without a culture, you have no identity. And so goes your culture, so goes your politics. Culture's the meat and potatoes, politics is the gravy. The more totalitarian a regime's nature, the more it will try to force people to forget their cultural memories. In the book 1984, the role of Winston Smith within the Ministry of Information is to erase all newspaper records of past events to reflect the current political priorities of the party. This, said the ex-communist Polish intellectual Kolakowski, reflects the great ambition of totalitarianism, the total possession and control of human memory. Let us consider what happens when the ideal has been effectively achieved, said Kolakowski. People remember only what they are taught to remember today, and the content of their memory changes overnight, if needed. We know from the history of communist totalitarianism how this can be achieved through a total state monopoly on information, including ideological control of education and media. Laura Nicolay's experience at Harvard, where the next generation of American and global elites are trained, suggests how this can be accomplished even in free countries, by teaching those who aspire to leadership positions what is important for them to remember and what does not matter. It is not news to Western conservatives that ideologues in power, both in classrooms and newsrooms, manipulate collective memory to capture the future. What is much less present in the consciousness of modern people, as Connerton avers, is how the liberal democratic capitalist way of life unintentionally does the same thing. And it does that because, again, of being influenced or brainwashed by culture. The essence of modernity is to deny that there are any transcendent stories, structures, habits, or beliefs to which individuals must submit and that they should bind our conduct. To be modern is to be free to choose. What is chosen doesn't matter. The meaning is in the choice itself. There's no sacred order, no other world, no fixed virtues and permanent truths. There is only here and now and the eternal flame of human desire. Volo ergo sum. I want, therefore I am. Cultural memories function to legitimize the present social order, says Connerton. This is why people in subordinate groups, that is, social minorities, have such a hard time holding on to their cultural memories. To keep the memories alive means fighting against the dominant order. Communism had a particular ideological vision that required it to destroy traditions, including traditional Christianity. Nothing outside the communist order could be allowed to exist. Similarly, in contemporary capitalism, cultural memory is subordinate to the logic of the free market, whose mechanisms respond to the liberation of individual desire. Christians today find it difficult to pass on the faith to the young, in large part because all of us have become habituated to a way of life in which there are few, if any, shared beliefs and customs that transcend individualism. This is what Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger meant on the eve of his election as Pope Benedict XVI when he condemned, quote, the dictatorship of relativism, unquote. To those who want to keep cultural memory alive, Connerton warns that it is not enough to pass on historical information to the young. The truths carried by tradition must be lived out subjectively. That is, they must not only be studied, but also embodied in shared social practices. Words, certainly, but more important, deeds. Communities must have living models of men and women who enact these truths in their daily lives. Nothing else works. A Budapest teacher says that Hungarians survived German occupation and a Soviet puppet regime, but 30 years of freedom has destroyed more cultural memory than the previous eras. What neither Nazism or communism could do, victorious liberal capitalism has done, he muses. The idea that the past and its traditions, including religion, is an intolerable burden on individual liberty has been poison for Hungarians, he believes. About Crowleyists today, he says, I think they really believe that if they erase all memory of the past and turn everyone into newborn babies, then they can write whatever they want on that blank slate. If you think about it, it's not so easy to manipulate people who know who they are, rooted in tradition. True. This is why Hannah Arendt described the totalitarian personality as the completely isolated human being. A person cut off from history is a person who is almost powerless against power. Communism was a massive use of lethal state power to destroy memory. Back in the United States, Olga Rosanova, a naturalized American who grew up in Siberia, says, in the Soviet Union they killed all the people who could remember history. This made it easier for them to create false history to serve the regime's needs. Yes, in the late Soviet period, most people had ceased to believe the communist line, but that doesn't mean that they knew what was true. As a historian says of those who came of age after the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, for anyone below the age of 30 who had only ever known the Soviet world or who had inherited no other values from his family, it was almost impossible to step outside the propaganda system and question its political principles. Back in a minute. Thank you very much. I wanted to go ahead and remind you that my book is out. It's called The Drill, and you can find it. It's an ebook, and you can find it on Kindle. Go to the Kindle store and just search for The Drill, and you'll find it. And it's a companion book to this podcast. It gives you more of an idea of the things that I've talked about in the past, and it's about what it means to be a true conservative. So, That brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And as always, you should be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and always remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.